at such a young age, I looked at people that just worked a job for their whole life and then came up to retirement and realized that there was no retirement, or what it meant was they were going to have to cut back their already limited lifestyle. So for me, there was really never another choice, right? But to keep moving forward and figure out a way, because ultimately, like, no job was going to dig me out of the holes that I had put myself in. That way.
Flat Bill Investor Podcast is brought to you by Drip Swag. Don't get bored with your swag. Get Drip Swag. Drip-swag.com.
Hi, welcome to the Flat Bill Investors Podcast. I'm Josh Zaglowski.
And I'm Zach Spencer. Welcome. Thanks, Josh. Today we have actually a really great guest. Been in real estate for a very, very long time. Maybe not like the longest, but by real estate investor standards, 2005, 2006, getting into real estate right out of high school. We got Christion Sadler. Welcome, Christion.
Thank you.
Christion, thanks for being here.
Glad to be here with you.
Yeah, thanks. We appreciate you being on.
So, Christion, let's get right into it. Like Zach mentioned, you got started in real estate at a younger age. Why real estate over all the different opportunities out there?
I didn't. So I knew that, traditional career probably wasn't a good fit for me anyways. I wasn't going to become a doctor, an attorney. So I was raised by a single mom of four. My mom is absolutely my hero. I will always scream that from the rooftops. As an adult now, I don't know how she did it. Yeah, I don't know how she did it, especially with a kid like me. I mean, I got in a lot of trouble and I caused a lot of trouble. But there was something that I paid attention to, which was the families that had more, that had the boats and the four-wheelers and the vacations. Their parents always owned real estate. And so I figured out pretty young, like, I think that's the path to go on, because these were people of all different backgrounds and education levels, but owning that real estate was what seemed like it provided the lifestyle. So
you were analyzing that at a young age.
Yeah, it was.
That's interesting. What's some things that you kind of defined that it came down to real estate for you? Well,
so I had uncle and aunt, for example. They owned a car wash, and they just seemed like, they worked a couple hours a week, and they just had a pretty great lifestyle. They had the cool house. They had like what I would consider like the first smart home that I ever saw, where you had like buttons that would turn on the radio and things like that, which, cool. This was back in the day when we didn't have anything like we have now. So, there was that example. I had a friend that his dad was a builder, and they would buy these, plots of land. They would build houses, turn around and sell them. And it seemed like they were one of the most wealthy, families that I knew. Not that I knew a lot of wealthy families. I mean, grew up out in Magna, out on the west side of the Salt Lake Valley. So I pretty much knew Magna
folks. Now is different than Magna 30, 40 years ago for sure.
Right. Yeah, definitely.
So.
Do you have any siblings?
Yeah. So there was four of us. I've got an older brother, older sister, and a younger sister.
Now you graduated high school. When did you start getting into real estate? Was it as a realtor? Was it real estate investing? Was it a combination of both?
Yeah. So I didn't get my license actually until only about 4 years ago. So I stayed, I didn't think I wanted to be an agent. So the examples that I saw of real estate agents at that time when I was looking at this didn't have the lifestyle necessarily. Right. And I don't want to knock on agents. I am an agent. I respect all of my fellow agents. Right. But it kind of felt like they were taxi drivers to some point, like they were running people around and that wasn't a lifestyle that I was looking for. So it was straight into real estate investing. And I mean, you guys will definitely remember back in the day, the newspapers would land on your, front porch, and you open those up and there's a full spread ad that says, down on Wiley Post Way, they've got, so-and-so coming into town to teach you how to become rich in real estate. Yeah. Like I was going to those in high school. Like I remember my friends making fun of me because
you're going there by yourself. Oh, wow.
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, that's awesome.
So I'd figure out a way to get there.
Yeah. How old were you when you read Rich Dad Poor Dad?
Oh, I didn't read that until I was already in my early 20s, probably.
Wow. Yeah, there you go. Cool.
But I had read other books. I wasn't a big reader. Like it took me a while before I actually got into reading books as an entrepreneur. It's kind of, I guess, taught into you. But back then, like reading wasn't my thing. So
yeah, same thing. I mean, talk about like you said, you struggled in school. I struggled in school. And right when audiobooks came out, I was like, wow, someone can read for me at 2 times faster than I can. I'm interested in that.
I'm in. Sometimes now I'll turn it down to like one speed just to like see what the guy's actually voice sounds like. Yeah. I'm like, this is brutal. One speed. I'm like,
crazy, I can't
do this.
It's crazy.
But I bought the DVDs or the CDs, I should say, right online. And so I was listening to those as I was running around. And
did you have a person? Like I was following this person for a long time.
I mean, I was just paying attention to the big names and trying to figure out what was be the best fit. So back then that was like Robert Allen, Carlton Sheets, and he was the one that really sparked me into like this idea of going and buying commercial real estate and creating this passive income. And
he made it look so easy on all his videos.
He
and
really
ordering
so
VCRs.
Like he said, whistly voice, and you knew his voice right away. It's so interesting because there's a lot of those that I didn't really get into until probably like 2015, 2016 is when I was like, oh, I ought to be reading and listening to these guys that have these things. I knew about Anthony Robbins, back in the day before he was Tony Robbins and things like that. But it's interesting to hear you guys just like say these names that I'm like, oh yeah, you guys.
Well, it's funny because I bought a Carlton Sheets whole packet. I think it was like $220. It was all VHS tapes, right? And what's funny is then I learned about a year and a half later from Jeff Rappaport, who's a local investor here in Utah. I always say my very first mentor. And I remember like in my first day, I'm like, oh wait, I got those tapes in my garage still that I've never opened. And I bought it never even opened the box. And just was like, oh, I'm going to get to that. I'm going to get to that. And you just never get to it,
Yeah. Well, it does make it so much more convenient now because you can download it and start the book like within 10 seconds.
I know.
So it really is. There are a few too that I found that if I have the book and I'm listening, then I'm like, oh yeah, now I'm really getting into this thing.
There's a guy named Ron too, Ron something LeGrand. Like he was another one that was like kind of around that.
Who was the one that did the tax notes and deeds?
Oh, Sean Higgins?
No.
He did tax lien certificates.
Okay.
So his company.
This was like, buy real estate pennies on the dollar, and he was on television. Anyways, I bought that program. They got me deep. Like when I was 18 years old, they figured out how much I could qualify for. They had me go apply for the credit cards and basically sold me a package of 80% of what I could put on those credit cards.
Wow. So they're just saying, hey, invest in this.
And then they
leverage yourself.
And then they turned around. And once I actually got with my coach, which they were based here locally, my coach is like, oh, this doesn't work in Utah because we have different laws here. So you need to go look at California properties. And I mean, then they started talking about, you've got to come up with $100,000 down and those types of things. And anyways,
this is on pennies on the dollar, the way it's promoted.
Yeah, exactly.
I always look at those things. It does suck, but the one thing that I've done is I've invested in some of those things, and it's got me in the game.
Yeah,
you got me in the game
Keep
to like.
focused.
This is exactly like you said. Stay that focus. I still am determined that this is going to work for me. So you mentioned before we started that you were hard into real estate at the younger age, in your late teenage years, early 20s, and then what did you do from there?
Yeah. So then I finally connected with a group that was local, that had local mentors and people that were actually investing, that I could like talk to about properties that were right there, that I knew that you tell me the address, I could go drive by it.
Much better.
And I was lucky enough that some of, the I guess higher ups in that organization, some of the leaders were willing to take me under their wing.
Yeah.
There was one gentleman in particular, Chad Wade, that I owe such a huge debt of gratitude. He has since passed away in a plane accident, and that was really, a hard loss for a lot of people. But he affected tens of thousands, and I was lucky enough that he saw something in me and kind of pulled me in close and put me in the right rooms.
So real estate's tough. I always tell people is like, when you first get started, it's a 6 to 12 month grind of not making money. How are you making money? Like, what were you doing? Did you have a career, not a career, but a 9 to 5
like
and you're doing on the side? Cause that's what I did. I was a teller and a loan officer. And then I would go knock doors on Wednesday evenings and Saturday mornings, So what did you kind of do to make money?
So with this group that I had joined, they did have kind of a network marketing model built into it. So I was kind of working that. When I first signed up, I didn't know anything about that. And I was just still working in the steel fabrication shop. So right out of high school, like while I was going to high school, I was going to an alternative school at that point. I got kicked out of every school after grade school, so I was going to an alternative school as a super senior because I didn't graduate.
I know, you just told me, I said, we were talking about how old he is. He's like 41. I'm 41. And so I was like, oh, so did you graduate in like 02 or 01? And he was like,
supposed to be 01. Yeah. Ended up being 02. And so alternative school, typically you'll go for half the day. So I was working half the day at UPS, like throwing boxes and loading trucks. And then I was, going to school for the other half of the day. But my friends had graduated on time. So a buddy of mine went into the steel fabrication. That's what his dad did. And so right out of high school, it was basically, I can get you, because UPS, you have to work for a certain amount of time before you can go full time.
Oh, gotcha.
Like 2 years or something.
Oh, wow.
And so he's like, I can get you full time work at double the pay that you're making now, or something like that. Maybe it wasn't double, but it was significantly more. And so, steel fabrication was what I was doing.
You learned how to weld then?
I learned a little bit of welding. I was mostly doing the fab side of it. So I ran the rolls, which if you guys look at fuel storage tanks that are sitting on the side of the road, like I've built some of those. I went to Antarctica on one project and built some out there. So that was, there was some cool experiences there. I mean, they didn't feel very cool at the time. I got to be honest with you, but honestly, they're cool stories.
You don't meet too many people that have been to Antarctica.
Right. I got the hard one out of the way early.
5.
Yeah. I can probably name 2.
Yeah.
You're one of them. That's cool.
There you go. So I was doing that. And then I was also working, like I said, kind of the network marketing side of it, which is basically helping other people learn real estate investing. And so making money from those couple of things, and then connected with a business partner that we did business together for years and years. He still acts like a CFO for me, basically. Kind of helps with, working, on my financial side. But we decided to team up and start doing some things together. And it started by doing some wholesales, and then we moved into luxury homes. And then that was June of 2007. So if anybody
we know that
tracks the timeline of Sharp Up, all of a sudden we went from
mortgage meltdown for sure.
And I really struggled in the beginning. I got to be honest with you. Like even before that, just transitioning from that employee to being an entrepreneur was really difficult for me. And I went through some very hard times.
Would you say there's like one thing you say, okay, it was difficult? Can you get granular on that a little bit? Like what was difficult about it?
I guess a couple of things. First of all, there's nobody there to tell you have to be at work. Right. So it's like, what do I actually do with my time? Actually figuring out what is considered money making activities and what to do with your time. And then on top of that, I was pretty new as an adult and figuring out how to run finances and stuff. All of a sudden, and I was doing great when I just had a 9 to 5 and I had auto debit coming out and whatnot. But all of a sudden you have those lean months that come with being an entrepreneur at an early stage. And pretty soon it was like, man, I'm, pawning stuff off. I'm trying to decide between whether I feed my dog or feed myself, and dog always got the food.
Find out that ramen packets go pretty far.
Right.
Well, it's funny because I've taught this and told this for about 15, 20 years. And as an entrepreneur, you got to treat it like a part-time job. So in other words, like when you have a part-time job, and let's say you're just waiting tables. I use this example all the time. If you're waiting tables at Outback Steakhouse and you work Wednesday nights and Saturday nights, you get done with your 9 to 5 and on Wednesday and you're like, oh my gosh, I'm so tired, but I'm going to put on the apron. I'm going to go because I got other people I'm accountable to them.
Right.
And you go there. As an entrepreneur, it is so easy to say, you know what, I'm going to do it tomorrow. I'm so tired tonight. I'm going to do it tomorrow on Thursday. Yeah. I used to call that manana disease. Like it's easy as an entrepreneur, just like I'm going to do it tomorrow. But when you have an actual part-time job, that's why you got to treat this as an entrepreneur as a part-time job. You have to.
Sometimes as an entrepreneur, it's nice to have that partner, to have an accountability. I mean, you see that in groups and places all the time where you say, hey, will you just keep me accountable? Because then it's like, I'll show up to the gym if I know I got to meet you, and if I don't meet you there, you're going to be ticked. I'm going to let you down.
And to give credit, that's the only thing that kept me in the game was I did have this community of people that were kind of checking in on me, and I was expected to be there on a weekly basis. And if not, I mean, at least I had somebody that cared enough to, to figure out where I was, but that wasn't every day. Right. And the rest of those days it was like, okay, what am I doing? And I had to figure that out.
You talk about your mentor, like really lucky to have somebody that you felt like they really saw that in you. That's great.
And it's funny because there was a point when you say like things were, I don't know the exact word you use, but like 2007 to 2010 it was very lean, very dark for me. Like it's not dark, that's a bad word, but like I went from like making such a great income in 04, 05, 06, and then 07. It's like every other day you're hearing like, oh, bank went down, bank went down, bank went down. You're like, what? It was just shocking, Then you watch the Big Short movie, you're like, oh, that's what kind of happened, But anyways, so then you kind of transition through that period, and because I know your story now, but you mentioned that you just got became a realtor 4 or 5 years ago, but kind of tell us what happened after that, kind of pre-pandemic to now, what you're kind of doing now.
So moving into that, like you said, we weathered the storm, but it was literally from like 2007 to 2010. It was I'll call it dark.
Yeah.
I mean, it was tough getting by. And the only way I got by was just going back to the basics and doing wholesales and short sales and fix and flips. And so that's what kind of, got us through, and it wasn't easy. And there was definitely lots of lean times and hard conversations. And then we started coming out of that 2010. It was like I made a commitment to myself that I was always going to have, a deal on, in the works. That started with a short sale, and it was like an 18-month negotiation.
Man, those short sales, because that was right when I was getting into
those
real
were way
estate
long
too.
back then.
Because I got licensed in 2007, and same thing. We were kind of like we're end of 2006 actually, and we just saw all these people in St. George that were doing
wild time,
so great. And so we had the opportunity to go from Cache Valley. My wife had just graduated from Utah State, and a builder friend, my brother-in-law, put us in contact with and said, hey, if you move down there, you can sell these 200 townhomes that we're building and you can live in one. We're brand new married. We're like, oh, this is sweet. This is awesome. And I sold the first couple in January. They were $219,900. And then by July, I sold one for $174,900. And then like in August, we bought two for $134,900, because I was like, this has got to be the lowest. And then by the end of the year, they were getting foreclosed on, and we started selling at like $100,000. So it was just that quick. How
it was
fast.
so quick.
Yeah, in the blink of an eye, all of a sudden we were like, hey, everything's on its head. So.
And most people talk about 2008 because that's when like the rest of the world felt it. But those of us that were in real estate, it was 2007.
Like we watched this as a real estate investor. It's like the wave came from California, Vegas through Utah. And it's like, it was like a dark wave.
Yeah. I would always be like, okay, we have a little bit of a lag between the states. And then you saw people in Vegas that were buying up 4, 5, 6, 10 houses at $25,000 for a $200,000 house. Yeah. And the people who were poised and ready with some cash went, okay, it's time to like pounce on this.
Yeah. Because I've always had my notary business for a long time. I remember doing they were selling their portfolio of properties they bought in 2008, 9, 10, something like that, which it was about 40 properties in Phoenix for under $500,000.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
He bought the whole tape. He called it the tape for $500,000. And he had to put about $500,000 into them. But then he just started renting them out. And he sold a portfolio when I met him for about $4 or $5 million.
Yeah. So,
I knew some people that bought some of those tapes as well.
100 extra money.
Yeah.
It doesn't happen too often, especially in that volume, but that's cool. Okay. So, you've gotten through a lot, and kind of looking back, it shows that you've got a lot of resilience.
Tons of resilience.
I think that's been like the theme that as we've been talking, I keep thinking, man, probably a lot of people you went to school with, you can see the trajectory of where they're probably at now. And even some of those kids at the alternative high school probably don't have a similar outcome to where you're sitting today.
You could have easily, Christian, so many times taken the easy way out and quit. When you look back, it's like, and that's not our easy way out, but it's when people look at that, it's like, man, you continue to like say, this is going to work for me. This is going to work for me. I'm getting punched in the face. I'm getting punched in the face, but I'm going to keep going. I'm going to keep going.
Yeah.
I always say the glass is half full. The glass is half full. We're still, every time we're waking up, we're telling ourselves that we're going to have a positive day. And sometimes we go to bed, it's not positive, but that's resilience for sure. So you definitely, show that in this interview.
Well, and you say easy way out. I mean, the truth is at such a young age, I looked at people that just worked a job for their whole life and then came up to retirement and realized that there was no retirement, or what it meant was they were going to have to cut back their already limited lifestyle. So for me, there was really never another choice, right?
Yeah.
But to keep moving forward and figure out a way, because ultimately, like, no job was going to dig me out of the holes that I had put myself in.
Yeah.
That way.
Well, we got a couple minutes left. So why don't we kind of talk about what you're doing now with PREIshare and why that's revolutionary in the commercial real estate world?
Yeah. So another mentor of mine that I met recently, Michael Anderson, and interestingly enough, he bought a big portfolio of debt back in the day, over $1 billion of debt. And he turned that around, and I think they bought it like 4 or 5 cents on the dollar and turned it around for 40 cents on the dollar or something like that. But he was a real estate syndicator for years and years. And I was introduced to him a few years ago because he had sold his company with over $1 billion in assets under management. He thought he was going to retire and realized that, like many of us, he didn't have any retirement skills. He didn't want to just sit around and watch the world go by. So he decided he wanted to leave a legacy to the industry. And for those who don't know what real estate syndication is, it's basically private equity for real estate. So the same way you would go buy into a company or buy a stock and the company's going to run the business, there's real estate investors out there that give you the opportunity as a passive investor to invest alongside them, but they do all the hard work. And so, that's what we've been building lately, is a way for those people to have liquidity, because in the past, you go invest $100,000 or $500,000 with an operator, and it's a 3-year deal.
Sure.
But then the market shifts, and we've seen that lately, right? And all of a sudden it turns into a 5-year deal, and that money was to be expected to put your kid through college or, something comes up in your life where you need that money. There really wasn't much of a way to get that in the past besides trying to go back to the sponsor and see if they'll buy you out, which obviously you're not in a good negotiation position in that scenario. So that's what we've created, is a marketplace where you can, and I don't want to call it a marketplace because we're not making a market per se. It's a private listing hub where you can put your interest, find a private buyer, get approval from your sponsor, and get liquidity.
Wow.
And what's happened?
And what's it called?
It's a PREIshare.
PREIshare.
And that's called the listing hub. So if you just go to thelistinghub.com, you can, learn all about it. But what it actually springboarded us into is we've also become basically a marketing firm for syndicators who are looking to raise capital from accredited investor. We've figured out that we're pretty good at connecting with those people. And I think part of that is we're looking out for that segment of the population that there's not many people looking out for. You see so much in the media and they're demonizing the millionaires, and the millionaires nowadays are the middle class. Those are the people that are just, have worked their whole life to try and, get something of stability to hold them, into the later years. And ultimately if they're smart enough to find private opportunities where they can get higher returns, oftentimes they're not looked after. So we're advocates for those passive investors. And at the same time, we're allies to good operators.
Well, and you say passive, this isn't passive, like somebody says, I'm going to have some real estate on the side and be a passive investor, but really they still are operating quite a bit,
Well, that's the thing is when, all growing up as a real estate investor, I don't even know if I was an investor back then because I just had a business in real estate really. Right. Yeah. And many people that are sold on passive investing are sold, go buy a fourplex or, whatever it is. That's not passive. That's very active. True passive investing is finding a good operator and placing your money with them. And these operators, you have to understand, they're giving up 70 to 80% of the upside on the project, 70 to 80% of all the tax benefits.
Does a passive investor in this case, when they're on the listing hub, do they get to choose which project they want to invest in? Or is it all in one piece and then the other operators make those choices? Yeah. That makes sense?
Great question. So it's all free market. So they pick and choose. So essentially what we have, the listing hub is where they can list their interests that they already have in existing positions. But then we also do allow platform sponsors, guys that are, working with us to help promote their new projects. And so they put them on there, but we're not investing money on anyone's behalf. We're not taking money in the interim. It's just, essentially connecting those two parties, people that are looking for good passive income opportunities and people that are out there creating them.
Yeah, that's cool.
So is the passive investor, are they responsible to underwrite their own deals?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I had this similar, are they acting as LPs or are they acting?
LPs. Yeah. And one thing that I really suggest there is learning how to do good due diligence. And that's what we're probably doing different than most anything that I've seen out there that lists these opportunities is we're, first of all, before a sponsor can even come on with us, they have to go through a disclosure process where they have to show all of their track record, their history, talk to us about any, legal things that they're dealing with. We do background checks on all of these guys and gals, and we get a big picture of what the business is and essentially lay it out for an LP so they can do proper due diligence. Because if you guys know anything about this business, most people that end up in an LP position, it's because their buddy, heard about this project and they were introduced and they're like, yeah, sounds like you guys are doing something cool. And they're handing over $50,000, $100,000, $500,000 checks to people that they know nothing about.
Yeah. Nor the deal sometimes.
Yeah. Nor the deal. So we want to empower those people to do their proper due diligence.
Cool. I mean, it sounds awesome. It sounds like a very unique, kind of very niche place to be because it's not something you just see every day. So that's cool.
Yeah, it's been a whole different world. It's been very interesting.
Yeah. Well, yeah, I was going to say there's so much there that we could probably spend a whole nother.
I mean, I'll just say this in real estate, like there's levels to this game. Everybody says that, right? There's levels to this game. You get around people that their goal was always 10 million, and then you get around somebody else it's 100 million, and then you get to a billion. But there's also different games within this game, right? And so it's been fun to learn all these different aspects of real estate and kind of get to put myself in the different positions.
Yeah, that's cool.
That's great. That's awesome.
Well, we appreciate you being here, man. It's been really cool to hear your story. And like I say, there's been some big standout terms as far as like who you are and what you've done and accomplished with what you were given. And so I really appreciate you being on.
Yeah. Ton of respect for both of you guys. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Thanks, man. Well, until next time, invest in your future.
Invest in yourself.
This is the Flat Bill Investors Podcast signing off.